Hi everyone, Danzlite here with the last Epoch alternate character guide for getting through the campaign as fast as possible. Namely, taking a character from level 1 to the monoliths in just a couple hours. Now, this guide assumes you already have taken a character through the main game, including collecting legendary leveling gear, multiple dungeon keys and portal charms, and access to the item faction of your choice. If you haven't done any of this yet, I suggest you read or watch a general leveling guide that focuses on new players or seasoned starters, as this guide is meant for alt characters and testing builds and whatnot as fast as possible. Once you've chosen a core class and have a mastery in mind, we have three main goals for our new alternate character that we want to achieve. One is completing enough side quests and dungeons to acquire all the idle slot unlocks. 2. Completing enough side quests and dungeons to acquire all 15 quest passive points. And 3. Getting far enough into the campaign that we can gain access to the Circle of Fortune or the Bazaar. Okay, so now from here on out, I'm going to speak a little more casually and only really hit the major points in the campaign that you need to pay attention to. If you want a slightly more detailed version of events, you can always check out the written guide in the description. And again, this guide does assume that you already know how to get through the campaign normally. I'm just here to tell you what detours you need to take. Okay. First things first, when you arrive at the Keeper's Camp, you need to join the item faction of your choice so that when you go to equip your new character with the gear you have saved in your stash, that the item tag will not prevent them from putting the gear you have on. I've got, as you can see here, I've got plenty of different ways to level up here. Make sure to talk to the gentleman on the ground near the Fortress Walls waypoint to complete the storerooms side quest, which will reward a passive point. Or side quest. After the storerooms, there's not really much deviation for the rest of Chapter 1, so let's just move on to the Void. Yeah. Once you arrive in Last Refuge Outskirts, you're going to talk to the guy who has a dog called Minimus, and you are going to follow a route which involves talking to 3 NPCs, which will later unlock you another passive point in the next town. Level 10. If you see a Nemesis, I just normally challenge or empower it. Mainly because they do give a lot of XP and they're not typically that difficult. You don't have to do this though. It's kind of a take it or leave it kind of thing. Kill just random one-offs. Talk to this last guy and that will be the last part of this quest. Once you're in the council chambers, turn in the side quest you just completed to get a passive point. Talk to Urza about getting a book, and then talk to Gaspar to get your first idle slots. Take a quick detour to Urza's library to pick up Urza's ledger for a passive point later. I wouldn't advise against doing ancient rifts as they are kind of a waste of time before the monoliths. Yeah, at this point, just progress as normal and defeat Panion students and return to council chambers. Once back at the council chambers, go ahead and turn in your quests to Gaspar and Urza, both for a passive point. Once you arrive at the precipice, you're going to proceed as normal to go fight the Idol of Loathing, which will open a time portal leading to the Ancient Cavern. Once you're in the Ancient Cavern, you will also just move through it as normal. When you exit the Ancient Cavern via the time portal near the waypoint there, and you arrive back in the Ruined Era, you'll actually move to the left, heading towards the Upper District, as opposed to the normal route, which normally would take you to the right. Once you've pushed past the waves of enemies in the Upper District, you'll eventually end up on the north side of the zone facing against a boss, who will then provide another passive point. Once you've taken him out, head to the east to the armory. Honestly, the rest of this section's pretty straightforward. Get to the armory, get to the end of the armory, go to the lower district, fight the Husk of Elder Panion, go to the end of time, get your mastery, and go back to the council chambers. Make sure before you leave the council chambers this time to speak with the chronomancer and the archivist to get a couple of side quests that will give you rewards later. At this point, you're going to move through the sheltered wood normally, going up to the surface, grabbing the surface waypoint, going north to the shrouded ridge, getting the lightless arbor waypoint, and then teleporting back to the surface. And after arriving back in the surface, moving towards the east, heading towards the cultist camp as normal. Once there, you'll proceed to help the cultist camp leaders as normal, collecting the symbol of hope and going to save the last Imperial, and basically just fighting the boss afterwards as normal. There's nothing really to deviate here in this section. Once you get to the Shattered Valley, though, you're going to head south across the bridge to go to the time portal that takes you to the Ancient Forest. All you have to do once you're in the Ancient Forest is kill the primeval dragon. I personally, after defeating the dragon, like to go to the waypoint nearby, taking it to get a quick jump back to the Shattered Valley. Regardless, go back to the Shattered Valley and then head north towards the abandoned tunnel. Now, just a warning, this is probably one of the longest walks in the whole game, but it is important because once we get to the abandoned tunnel and we arrive at the Lost Refuge, at the end of the Lost Refuge section, there will be a book that, once you properly go through the dialogue boxes for it, will give you a whopping 2 passive points. And at this point, we're pretty much done with everything up to Lightless Arbor. You're going to teleport back to the council chambers, turn in a couple quests, and then teleport over to Lightless Arbor. Now, this isn't really a dungeon or a boss guide, so all I'm going to say is that when you get to Lightless Arbor, make sure that you're using a portal charm along with your Lightless Arbor key so that you can go directly to the Titan boss room. From there, you're just going to fight the boss like normal, except that when you defeat them, you're going to go behind not only the boss room, but also behind where the vault is, leading to our first dungeon skip, the Corrupted Lake, which should also reward an idle slot badge and a couple passive points. Successfully skipped our first, did our first dungeon skip. Now, while in the Corrupted Lake, the first thing you're going to do is actually circle around the outer part of the lake, going clockwise, until you end up fighting another one of those giant idle void worm type bosses, which will reward another passive point and some idle slots. After that, you can kind of just walk a little bit southwest to go grab the waypoint nearby, and then go all the way counterclockwise back to where you entered the zone from, and then walk up right to the time portal in the center of the zone. Now, once you get to the Risen Lake, things become quite linear again. You're mainly just going to be going through the Risen Lake, going through the Fallen Tower, going through Imperial Fatima, going through the Dreadnought, and then fighting Undead Harkin and jumping to the Shining Cove. Now, all of this pretty straightforward. You're also able to take a short detour to go grab the Soulfire Bastion waypoint if you wish. But again, not really a required thing. I would say around the time you get to level 30. From here, you're going to head east deeper into the desert, making sure to take note of a door that has a time portal locked behind it. We will come back to that later. But for now, head to the desert, making sure to speak to a skeleton called Rouge Zabat, who will give us another side quest that will involve taking some gems from a very large scorpion, and then proceeding to deliver said gems to Rouge Zabat, who will meet you in Undead Majelka. The rest of Majelka is pretty straightforward, and once you arrive at the Oracle's abode, you will proceed to speak to 2 people. One is the Oracle Nagasa, that is on the far side of town, and then doubling back to the Shrine Maiden standing next to the waypoint, who will give you probably one of the most important side quests in the game, and more importantly, unlocking that door we saw earlier in the Shining Cove. Once you get to the Ruined Coast, proceed like normal and cross the bridge to fight the mini-boss guarding the Sapphire Tablet, making sure to pick it up, and then going through the exit to the Temporal Sanctum. Once you're in the Temporal Sanctum, you're going to teleport back to the Oracle's abode, turn in the quest for some idle slots, and then teleport back to the Temporal Sanctum for our final dungeon skip of the run. Now, just like with Lightless Arbor, you're going to be using the dungeon key for Temporal Sanctum along with the portal charm so that you can teleport directly to Jorah. Now, just a warning, Jorah can be quite the difficulty jump if you haven't got the proper gear, so make sure that your stash has stuff that is appropriate for somebody who is around level 30 to 35 at this point. Once you defeat her, you're going to go once again behind the dungeon boss room. You may need to click on the Eternity Cache, the dungeon reward, to open the bar gates that will let you go past behind the Eternity Cache to go to our final and most important dungeon skip, taking us to the Radiant Dunes. Once you arrive in the Radiant Dunes, you should acquire another pair of passive points and an idle slot badge. Progression returns to normal here, where you're going to rescue Zarek, bring him to Majelka, speak to Yulia, and then make sure to pick up the side quest that Zarek gives, which is to defeat the Ruby Arjani commander in the Majelka districts. Once in the district area, all you need to do is hug the north side of the zone, going west and to the left until you find the Ruby Arjani commander, defeat him, and Zarek will appear where you can turn in the quest immediately and get the final batch of idle slots. And with that done, we have officially gotten all 15 quest passive points, all 8 idle slot batch rewards, and access to both item factions via entering Majelka. So congratulations. If you followed everything, or at least close enough to everything, you should have all of the passive points, all of the idle slots, your item faction, and at this point, it's time to get going to the monoliths, making sure to put points in your Weaver tree, collecting your first prophecies if you're in the Circle of Fortune, or buying or selling gear, or whatever they do in the Bazaar. And yeah, enjoying the last Epoch endgame and allowing yourself to take this new character to new heights. And yeah, that's all from me, guys. I'm so glad I was able to make this. Thank you all for watching. I'm not really one to make a video like this. I've never really gone this far in depth with editing and things like that, so I apologize if things seem a little out of place or aren't very clear. There is a written guide in the description if there is something I may have missed, or if you need a little bit detail about some section. I cover most of what I wrote in that guide here in this video. And yeah, I mean, I'm going to keep things updated where I need to, but until then, thank you all for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, all that jazz. And yeah, we'll see you in the next one, and have a good day, everybody. Good luck with your alts.